Hello, Tyler here with SSA Architecture, small studio associates, licensed architects in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the surrounding area, including California and Arizona. Depending on the type of commercial business you are looking to open, the plans and other aspects of the business may need to be submitted to the health department before being able to open. There are a few major business types that require approval from the health department. These primarily concern restaurants, body art establishments, schools, and the temporary lodging locations, such as hotels. There are many other businesses that require permits from the health department, but they are less common or fit under one of the prior mentioned categories. As recently discussed in a video too, a grease trap is an important thing to look into when creating a new restaurant. However, this is not the only important item of contention when opening a restaurant. The restaurant will also need to pass through the health department to ensure that it can open. A submission to the health department for restaurants typically includes all of the following: an application, proof of ownership or legal documents expressing consent from the owner, the plans for the restaurant, and a menu with a supplemental food questionnaire. The application and proof of ownership are mostly self-explanatory portions of the submission. Beyond those, however, the items that actually must be reviewed and approved are the plans and the menu. When submitting plans to the health department, it is important that the submission has an entire plan set with specifications and all important aspects laid out for the reviewer. This means that each and every piece of kitchen equipment is specified and placed in position with corresponding plumbing and electrical lines attached. In our experience, the health department can be very meticulous, and as such it is important to have everything in its most precise location with as much information and notes attached as possible. Beyond the plans and equipment, the health department also needs to review the menu and all the ingredients being used in said menu. The review will also concern the food source associated with the ingredients. The health department can be very meticulous in this portion of the review process as well. Depending on the ingredients, it is quite common for them to inquire about cooking processes and other sanitation techniques used when making the processing of food items safe. A common example we have seen multiple times in the past is the use of eggs. Eggs have a reputation for making people sick when undercooked or handled improperly. As such, if the menu or ingredients list calls for eggs, it is likely that the health department will inquire about the handling, storage, and cooking process of the eggs within the restaurant. A brief explanation for this and any other concerns typically allow for a restaurant to pass through the review process with minimal changes. However, if the health department finds a major issue with the planned equipment or layout, there may need to be extensive changes to the specs and the corresponding connections or to the layout itself in order to pass through the plan check. This is all subject to the given specific restaurant, as the process is unique for each project, regardless if this new restaurant is a new location in a chain or if the owner has opened restaurants in the past. Aside from the basic plan and menu submission, there may also be additional requirements based on the type of restaurant that is being created. Bars and sushi establishments are common examples of types of restaurants with additional requirements. This stems from the items being served at those types of businesses. For more information on this, you can check with your local health department's requirements or inquire with the architect who is working on your project. Beyond restaurants, the health department also approves body art businesses that specialize in the changing of a person's body, most commonly in the form of tattoos. The submission process is similar to that of the restaurant. However, the submission requires some different items in place of the items pertaining to the food that will be served. The submission of a body art establishment will likely require the following items: an application, proof of ownership or legal documents expressing consent from the owner, the plans for the new location, and some different medical documentation for the establishment. Once again, the application and proof of ownership are fairly self-explanatory in this case. The plans that need to be submitted are fairly similar to that of a restaurant, as all of the equipment needs to be specified and shown to be connected to the facility properly. It's the additional documentation that may affect your overall submission the most. The health department here in Southern Nevada requires documentation pertaining to a patient's aftercare plan, consent form, and an infection plan, along with documentation of training in preventing diseases, CPR, and first aid, all from the American Red Cross. They also require documentation of spore testing of sterilizers if needed, and finally they also require documentation of the practicing body artist's current body art card. which in Southern Nevada is regulated by the health department themselves. Most of that documentation pertains to the business itself. It is less important in the terms of the architect, as they only will be able to address comments from the health department pertaining to the submitted plans and equipment. As such, a majority of the submission information will come from the client in this case. As mentioned prior, the health department also provides permits for schools and other similar locations such as child care facilities. As before, the submission and review process are somewhat similar to any other submission, though it is most similar to that of a restaurant submission. These are some of the items that are likely to be required by the health department: an application, proof of ownership or legal documents expressing consent from the owner, the plans for the new location, and other miscellaneous items that often come with schools and similar care facilities. And finally, a menu will also need to be submitted if the plans have a cafeteria or similar space that serves food. As before, the application and proof of ownership are self-explanatory, and it is more important to cover the other aspects of the submission. For schools, it may also be required for your plans to include more information for the different rooms in the facility. Specifically, the health department may require the room sizes and occupancy to be displayed in each room. Beyond that, there may be additional requirements when it comes to specifying the different sinks and toilets within the facility, depending on the age range of the students that will use the facility. Here in Southern Nevada, the plans are required to show additional information for the toilets and sinks if there are classrooms for students under the age of 5 years old. Additionally, it will be required for the plans to include any information on included outdoor play areas, as the information is important to the safety of the students. Finally, as mentioned prior, if the facility is also to have a cafeteria or similar eating area, a menu will also need to be submitted, just as it would have to for a restaurant, as described earlier in the video. The final common establishment to require health department approval is that of hotels and other similar locations such as motels. This submission is most similar to that of a school. When submitting a hotel for approval from the health department, they are likely to require the following: an application, proof of ownership or legal documents expressing consent from the owner, plans of the new location, and a menu if applicable. After setting aside the application and proof of ownership because of their self-explanatory nature, we arrive at the plans, which as described earlier will require equipment specifications and connections. Additionally, if the building is large enough, it may be required for the room dimensions and occupancy to be displayed similar to that of a school. Also similar to a school, if the hotel is to provide breakfast or have a restaurant of some kind inside, a menu will also need to be submitted, just as with any restaurant. This process was described earlier in the video. When it comes to hotels, it is also common for them to have a pool. If this is the case, it will also need to be included as a part of the submission, similar to that of the outdoor play area at a school. Depending on your health department, the pool submission may also need to be separated from the original submission. In Southern Nevada, there is a completely different submission process that may be required depending on the different aspects of the pool. All of the prior mentioned information can be very handy for a building owner or applicant who needs to get plans checked by the health department. However, this video also more or less covers SSA's process in submitting to the health department for a client. Here at SSA Architecture, we offer health department submission as a service. Given that we are the ones drawing the plans and specifying the equipment and the connections, we are best suited for responding to health department comments and concerns. It may be easier for the submission process if your architect handles the submission and the response to issues, as it may result in a sped up process when moving towards the final building department submission. This is, of course, subjective to each project. As I mentioned prior, every project is unique and special in its own way, and an architect submission may be less important for your building project. As such, it is important to speak with your architect about this and about any other submission processes your project may have to go through. Hopefully this video has provided you with information pertaining to the health department and their submission process. If you have questions or are looking for an architect to help you with your submission to the health department, feel free to call us at 702-873-1718 and schedule a free consultation. Otherwise, you can check out our website's Frequently Asked Questions page over at smallstudioassociates.com. As always, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.